The Dame is the beating heart of a pantomime.
The caricature of a woman of a certain age.
The man in a dress. That's what's funny about The Dame.
A woman getting hit with a custard pie is not funny, but a man in a dress getting hit by a custard pie is suddenly hilarious.
She is the comic pivot of the piece.
The Dame subverts the comedy, and I think that's what's really clever about the concept. And I think that's why it's survived.
It's like a jester, but if a jester was your mum. We are the joke, but we're in on the joke.
There should be no question in anyone in that audience's mind that you're a man, a funny man.
I want children to know that I'm a man and know that that's the reason I'm funny, but be able to trust that as a mother figure, if they were to fall over in the playground, then they could come to me for help.
I think there needs to be a split belief for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, in like a really nice pathos scene where you can genuinely believe that that dame is Aladdin's mom, but it should be turned back on its head again.
I am not your typical sort of pantomime dame. It's not obvious that I'm a bloke because it's a very glamorous dame. But yeah, you could be quite touching and have pathos even though you're glamorous.
I end up really being pretty much myself and let the costumes and the makeup do a lot of the work.
I do like to play her as a character as well, so then when you do the kind of asides to the audience or you let them in, they kind of resonate slightly more.
You can be, when needed, the centre of attention, but you can also be very much part of the storyline, part of the role.
The Dame provides the family aspect within the show.
I always consider my dame as part of the audience. I'm on the audience's side, so I tell them what's happening. If anything goes wrong, I talk to them. I say, oh, you know, who's booked him? You know, it's all gone wrong out there. Don't worry about that. Isn't it cheap? I'm sorry. You know, get your refunds. I'm a member of the audience. I'm old school, so I loved all the, you know, the Terry Scotts and the Billy Dainties, people like George Lacey and Jack Tripp.
And I remember seeing the Terry Scott strip. And I was only about 3 or 4, but I can really remember it quite vividly.
I loved Danny LaRue as a dame, although sometimes Dan used to wear dresses, and I used to think they should be maybe just a little bit more over the top. When he did wear over the top, they were fantastic.
I always thought Jack Tripp, who was a brilliant dame, one of the best, but he played it gentle and nice.
He made it look effortless, and there was no fuss about him. He was quite simple, but still had this enormous character, which I really admire.
I love Les Dawson as Dame. He's a true Dame.
The deadpan delivery for a start, you know. It could just, a withering look, didn't have to say a word, but
You're always an apprentice, you're always looking up, looking why they were brilliant and taking those parts.
And then you create something new and original yourself.
But then it's still, because you're you, it still becomes you. I'm very clear that I always want her to look clowny rather than lady. And soft, you know, I think the Dame should look soft.
Especially if you've got them on stage for a song sheet and you're knelt down with them. It can't be frightening.
Les Dawson, you should just put a red, that's all that you say, oh, well, it's at the 5 now, you just put a bit red on, that was it, and go on. Arthur Askey didn't wear anything, just a wig.
But I wear a lot of makeup because I don't quite have a craggy face yet, because I look a little bit weird dressed as a woman otherwise.
I don't think my makeup is that important to my dame. It's just an exaggeration of my normal makeup when I'm doing my one-man show.
The thing I think is most important is the character as a whole, but the facial expressions.
Because also sometimes what you find is when you'll do a makeup and you lose your own expression's lost. So you're sort of stuck in this permanent, no matter what you're doing.
There's a lot that goes on with my face, and the makeup that I put on kind of doesn't make sense until I pull those faces.
I think the costumes are more important than the makeup for a dame.
It's your armour. And also it's your first laugh.
You've got to hit them straight away.
It's your first smile, really. It's up to you the rest of the way.
It is 90% important.
There can't be a dress, it's got to be a funny, over-the-top. You know, it's got to be big shoulders, big wigs, big hats.
it's got to have at least a couple showstoppers, especially for the walk down.
I have a lot of construction frocks.
At least 2, one each act where the audience go, wow.
I've got a new frock for Blackpool this year, which is a sandcastle with big ice creams on the shoulders and sticks of rock and things like that.
In the old days, it would be Oxo or, you know, Foster's, or it's got to be something that's funny.
I try to be original, and it's difficult to dream up things, you know, every year because things have been done.
I do like the traditional side of it, but I think we have to now twist it with a bit of modern.
Stanley Baxter was dressing up as a chandelier years ago, and a 5-tiered wedding cake.
We're progressing further and further with Pantos. They're getting shinier and bigger, and they're becoming West End productions, so the Dame has to step it up every year with that as well. I like to be pretty. I like to wear a lot of colour, and I like to wear nice shoes. I like to be prettified.
I don't shy away from those sort of short costumes and sort of skinny type costumes because again it's funny.
I think it's really, really important that you try and change your costume every time you come on stage.
I'll never wear the same costume twice.
So whilst other actors are having a sip of water and sitting down in the dressing room, quite often you're taking off one cumbersome dress and putting something else equally as ridiculous on.
You're doing 16 costume changes, and some of them are in under 30 seconds, including tights, dress and a wig and maybe a pair of shoes.
If you've got a 3 show a day, that can be hard.
I have my own costumes, so I know they fit. I know how to get them on. I'm not worried about quick changes because I know which costume can be used for a quick change and which one can't.
You can't be lazy. You can't expect the costume to do all the work. Otherwise, you may as well just be replaced by a mannequin.
I'm not one of the dames that wears different wigs all the way through.
I like wearing the same colour hair. The kids recognise it, but also what I really like about it is it looks like she's just had her hair done.
I consider myself as a crowd manipulator. I like to bring the audience along in a journey and make them do what I want them to do.
My personal favourite is when I get a heckler, because they always make that mistake. They forget that I've got a microphone and 20 years experience.
I pick on a woman in the audience and have a female friend. And so the running gag doesn't have to be so laboured, it's just, what do you think about that, pet? And the audience love it. And you get more little old ladies willing to join in than big burly blokes.
We need to be able to know that we can control and command what's going on without taking too much away from the plot. But you need to be able to know you can get back to where you've gone away from. I loved being an ugly sister and hated it at the same time.
I much prefer my motherly, northern, warm character.
It's a totally different thing.
You've got to get on well together.
Yeah.
We've seen sisters before that are 2 actors just put together, and I personally don't feel that works.
As a dame, I can control what's happening. It's me who's in control of the situation. As an ugly sister, we had to have such a bond that if one of us went, the other one would go.
Some people are brilliant at it, and I wasn't. I didn't like being booed.
The Dame is like that mother figure, the warmth, whereas the uglies, you've got to be nasty.
But the way I describe the two, I say sisters should wear heels, dames should wear flat shoes.
It's one thing that we do it very well, and we just need people to keep coming. And so we need to pass it on to the next generation.
I'd like to see dames do more physical stuff.
We need new grades, and we need people just do the homework and keep the tradition alive.
I would like to think that the Dame that would have longevity.
It'll constantly evolve and change, as it has done since the 19th century.
As long as it's outrageous and it's quite taboo, it will work. If it's becomes the norm, then it won't work because it's not outrageous anymore.
I think the lack of female principal boys is a threat to the Dame because people say they're uncomfortable with girls playing boys and girls kissing through the love story. At some point that will affect the Dame.
But yet you have not lost the blokes dressed up as the Dame, and I don't think you ever will.